China's active military personnel are in the millions. For example, one estimate, 2,535,000 active personnel, 510,000 reserves. China also fields large numbers of aircraft, 3,144 total aircraft in one estimate, and Navy ships over 1,000, according to one source. China's military budget is among the largest in the world. In 2025, its official budget was 24.6 billion yuan, according to one source. The Philippines' active military personnel are much smaller. One estimate, 157,000 active personnel and 1.4 million reserves, though reserve numbers may have varying meaning for the Philippines. Equipment numbers are correspondingly small. For example, 191 aircraft with only 7 combat aircraft and 134 ships. The Philippines' ranking in terms of global military strength is relatively modest. For example, one source states the Philippines ranked 51st of around 140 countries for 2022 firepower strength. In raw numbers, China outpaces the Philippines by a large margin in personnel, equipment, and budget. The Philippines has a significantly smaller force and less capability in many domains. Equipment and domain capabilities: land, air, sea. Land domain. China is modernizing its main battle tanks and has large numbers. One study notes that compared to Southeast Asian countries, China holds a significant numerical advantage, including modern MBTs like the Type 99A. For the Philippines, land armored strength is much smaller. One earlier estimate listed only 10 main battle tanks. Air domain. China. Hundreds of combat aircraft, steep modernization underway. Fighters, bombers, etc. For example, one estimate, 1,705 combat aircraft out of 3,144 total aircraft. Philippines, very limited number of combat aircraft. One estimate lists only 7 combat aircraft for the Philippines. Also, the head of the Philippine Air Force is quoted as saying the Philippines does not aspire to be at par with China in air power. Naval domain. China has a large navy and growing blue water capability, ships, submarines, carriers. For instance, 1,025 ships, including 3 aircraft carriers, 73 submarines in one count. Philippines, much smaller navy with fewer ships, limited projection beyond coastal defense. One article noted the Philippine Navy's true value rating, a composite metric, was 33.7 versus China's Navy 319.8 in one assessment. China has substantial advantages in each major domain: land, air, sea. The Philippines is more focused on territorial defense, internal security, and has far fewer capabilities for large-scale power projection. Budget, economy, and industrial base. China. Military budget is approximately 246 billion US dollars 2025 estimate, according to one source. Large defense industrial base. China is a major arms producer and exporter, capable of producing advanced systems across all domains. Philippines. Much smaller defense budget relative to China or other large powers. For instance, one earlier estimate, 2016, put Philippines' defense/purchasing power international military expenditure around US $5.26 billion per Lowy Institute data. Industrial base for defense is much more limited. Much of the Philippines' equipment is imported, often older or second-hand systems. China's economy and defense industrial capacity give it a large advantage. The Philippines' smaller budget and more constrained industrial base limit its ability to compete at the same scale. Strategic context, geography, and alliances. China's strategic context. China claims most of the South China Sea through its 9-dash line and has been increasingly active in patrols, Coast Guard or Navy operations, and building infrastructure on disputed islands. China's growth of naval and air power supports its ambitions to project power beyond its immediate shores, for example, into the first island chain, South China Sea, Indian Ocean, etc. Philippines strategic context. The Philippines is an archipelagic state with many islands, long coastlines, and significant exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea. That geography places it in a challenging position for defense. The Philippines has a defense treaty with the United States of America, the U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty, and is pursuing greater cooperation with external partners. One article says the Philippines sees alliances as necessary because its insufficient naval capabilities make confronting China alone problematic. Geography and logistics. China has the advantage of large territory, deep industrial base, and infrastructure to support power projection and sustained operations.
The Philippines faces challenges such as dispersed islands, infrastructure limitations, reliance on external supply lines, or allied support for major operations. An assessment concluded the Philippines cannot sustain a Chinese attack no matter how much it modernizes. Strategically, China is better placed to exert power regionally. The Philippines has strategic vulnerabilities, but also strategic importance, for example, as a partner to the US and in the maritime domain. The alliance dimension matters a lot.
What can the Philippines realistically do? What is its niche? The Philippines appears to recognize that it cannot match China on a one-for-one basis in the near term. For example, one quote, "If we are comparing ourselves to the threat in the region, let's say China, we cannot be at par with China even 10 to 20 years from now." Instead, the Philippines is investing in more modest but targeted capabilities, for example, focusing on coastal defense, anti-access, anti-denial systems, and partnerships. The Philippines' defense strategy often emphasizes deterrence, using alliances, leveraging geography, islands, littoral waters, and trying to make any aggression costly for an opponent. It is improving infrastructure, bases, radars, surveillance, and upgrading equipment, but the gap remains large. Implications of a hypothetical conflict or standoff. If we imagine a scenario of heightened tension or limited conflict between China and the Philippines, for instance over disputed maritime zones, here are some implications. China's advantages. China could impose significant military pressure, sea or air blockade, ships, submarines, due to its superior numbers and reach. China could attempt coercive actions, aggressive patrols, or rapid deployment of assets. China's weapon systems and logistic support allow sustained operations beyond coastal waters.
Philippines constraints. The Philippines may be able to resist, delay, and use its local geography and alliance support to complicate China's operations, but controlling escalation and sustaining defense would be difficult without external help. The Philippines alone is unlikely to match China in open-ended high-intensity war. Its best path is deterrence, alliance leverage, and denying easy gains to China. Logistics, maintenance, readiness, and integration are harder for a smaller military facing a large peer competitor. Role of allies and external actors. The Philippines' alliance with the US and partnerships with other regional powers become critical. Deterrence is partly through the possibility of allied response rather than purely national power.
China will weigh the risk of wider escalation, international reaction, economic cost, etc. So, although China has the capability, the political, strategic decision to use it is complex.
The China versus Philippines military power gap is large and structural. China has a much larger budget, far greater numbers of personnel and hardware, a sophisticated defense industrial base, and greater power projection capability. The Philippines has a much smaller force, limited in many domains, and its strategic posture emphasizes defense, deterrence, alliances, and making aggression costly, rather than matching China symmetrically.
Its best avenue is partnership, deterrence, and leveraging geography and alliances. That said, size isn't everything. Factors like will, terrain to geography, alliances, operational readiness, logistics, and political context matter a lot. The Philippines still has options to influence outcomes, especially in the maritime domain, and with allied backing. Things to watch and future trends. How the Philippines upgrades its armed forces. What new equipment, what capability enhancements. How China continues to modernize, for example, new aircraft carriers, submarines, and advanced missiles. The role of alliances, joint exercises, foreign basing, and shared systems. Maritime incidents in the South China Sea, and how coercion, short of war, may shape outcomes. For example, Chinese Coast Guard/Navy activity increasing near Philippines' claimed waters. The Philippines' strategy of using asymmetric capabilities, e.g., shore-based anti-ship missiles, surveillance, and coastal defense, to raise cost for an aggressor.